Not all Americans are bad. Bernie Madoff, Charles Manson, Lindsay Lohan. Okay, maybe we need to look a little farther back. Look, it's Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Abigail Adams.
It is.
This is the best you've got?
I wrote the Declaration of Independence. When's the last time you wrote one of the most legendary documents in American history?
Yeah. So you're saying you've done nothing for the past 200 years?
I just came back through the dead. I lost my luggage and baggage claim. Give me a break.
Oh, just came back from the dead, eh? It took you 200 years just to get through customs?
Ever since 9/11.
Please, be respectful. This is one of our first presidents you're talking to.
Yeah, when's the last time you...
Enough! You are more wordy and less useful than the Articles of Confederation.
Hey now!
Can we not?
Who asked you?
Gentlemen. And women. Yes, and women. My friend here doesn't think that you're good role models.
What?
I was hoping I could interview each of you to set the record straight.
That sounds like a wonderful idea.
I will go first.
Oh.
Let's start with a little background information.
Well, my name is John Adams. I was born in Massachusetts in 1735. I went to university at Harvard. I was a diplomat to France and Holland, as well as a delegate to the First and Second Continental Congress. I served as vice president to George Washington for 2 terms and was president from 1797 to 1801.
Now, that's impressive.
What did you do during your presidency?
I'm asking the questions. What did you do during your presidency?
Well, I prevented war between France and America.
How?
Well, it was all John Jay's fault. He negotiated a peace treaty between Britain and America while France and Britain were at wars. You really can't imagine how angry France was.
What happened?
I sent a delegation to France. The French wanted more money than we could afford to give them to mend the dispute. The French were threatening to start war, but I held my ground. I told them that if my delegates were not properly received by the French, we would not negotiate. Eventually the French gave in.
Couldn't you have just as easily started a war between France and America?
But I didn't.
Right, he didn't.
Well, what else did you do?
I passed a series of acts known as the Alien and Sedition Acts to deter opposition.
Go on.
Well, there was the Alien Act, which states I can deport dangerous aliens at will.
And how do you define dangerous aliens?
Well,
What else did that Alien and Sedation Act say?
I could expel aliens from the country at times of war, and I declared riots and interference with officers high misdemeanors. Even verbally defacing the government was a misdemeanor.
Doesn't that seem a little, well, harsh to you? Doesn't that directly infringe on the freedom of the press?
I don't think so, not at all.
Weren't you against slavery, Mr. Adams?
Yes, I was. Never owned a slave in my life.
Well, that's impressive, isn't it?
Not really. What about women's rights?
Well, we kind of had a lot on our plate at the time.
Let's talk to Thomas Jefferson. About yourself, Mr. Jefferson.
I was born and raised in the state of Virginia. I was in Virginia's House of Burgesses. I was the governor of Virginia in 1799 and president from 1801 to 1809. I was also the author of the Declaration of Independence.
Would you like to tell us your feelings about slavery?
I advocated the abolition of slavery.
And yet you owned slaves yourself.
That was different. I was like a father to them.
A father that wouldn't let them leave the house and force them to do all of his chores?
I had to look after them.
You considered the welfare of your slaves your responsibility?
Of course.
Elaborate.
They can't look after themselves. They have no sense of reason, no personal hygiene skills.
So you're saying African Americans are socially inferior?
Of course they are. I never wanted them to cohabitate with us. I wanted them sent to the West Indies.
What about all men are created equal? You wrote those words yourself.
You say a lot of things you don't mean in life.
Didn't you have an affair with an African American woman?
I plead the fifth.
I think that's all we need to hear.
Sorry. Refilming.
I don't understand. The Founding Fathers aren't who I thought they were at all. This is horrible.
Running out of options, eh?
I have one more person to interview.
Who is that?
Me, Abigail Adams.
Tell us about yourself, Mrs. Adams.
I was born in 1774 in Massachusetts. I married John Adams in 1764. I was an abolitionist and a women's rights advocate.
Go on.
I wanted women to have an equal education. I wanted them to have independence as well. In my letters to John, I told him to remember the ladies. He, for the most part, ignored me. You hear me, Johnny?
Of course, dear.
What was I talking about?
You were talking about... say, darling, would you like to go out to dinner tonight?
His attention span is barely longer than Kim Kardashian's marriage. What was I saying?
You were talking about women's rights.
Ah, yes.
Mrs. Adams, if you felt so strongly about women's rights, why did you never petition to Congress?
I don't know. I was trying to be a good first lady, I suppose. If I could go back in time, perhaps I would have.
Speaking of being a first lady, how did you feel about your husband's Alien and Sedation Acts?
I supported them.
Do you believe that these acts infringe upon the freedom of the press?
I don't know. This conversation is over.
As you wish, Mrs. Adams.
Johnny, I'm ready to go now.
What?
Okay. Well, what did you think of Abigail Adams?
Out of the three, she was clearly the most admirable. She was the only one who supported both the abolition of slavery and women's rights.
What didn't you like about her?
I just wish she had taken more of a stand for her cause.
Don't you think that might have hurt her husband's political campaign?
Would a truly free woman care?
I don't know. What can we take away from this?
I'd say America's founding fathers aren't all they're cracked up to be.
I guess so.
Want to go play Call of Duty?
Heck yeah.